Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Menagerie. Today's monster used to charge people $25 to commit his atrocious actions upon them, and was heralded as a savior of the mentally ill for many years. Walter Jackson Freeman II was born on November 18, 1895. During his academic career, mental health treatment was in an abysmal state worldwide, often taking a person with benign psychological afflictions or no issues at all, and taking away their humanity piece by piece. In essence, asylums were prisons and torture chambers for the mentally ill, or simply those thought of as mentally ill. In this abysmal state, Freeman became seen as a savior for mental health, first by conducting prefrontal lobotomies in conjunction with neurosurgeon Dr. James Watts, starting in 1936. However, in 1946, Freeman developed and used the transorbital lobotomy. It was known as the ice pick method because Freeman first experimented with the procedure in his own home with an ice pick and a grapefruit, then with cadavers, and then finally trying it on living patients. The procedure was fast. It quickly caught on through Freeman's efforts in promoting it in asylums across the United States, and soon became widely popular as a form of treatment for issues ranging from schizophrenia to depression. This allowed Freeman to work on his own outside of surgical settings, turning an intensive surgical procedure into a 10-minute process of driving a pick into the brain through the eye socket. By 1950, Dr. Watts cut ties with Freeman due to his unethical practices, namely the cruelty and overuse of the procedure. That being said, here are some broad strokes to give you an idea of how horrible this man was. He performed the procedure on at least 19 minors, including a 4-year-old child. One victim of his, 12-year-old Howard Dully, wrote a book about his long recovery, and it's one of the most disturbing things I've read in a long time. Freeman promoted this procedure as a showman, salesman, and entertainer, not as a doctor, and certainly not assessing the need for the procedure on a given patient. It was like a snake oil salesman with an ice pick and a mallet. He did not use gloves or a mask while performing the procedure. Many times, he would re-perform the procedure multiple times on a single patient. Through all of this, the procedure was mostly ineffective, often severely damaging or outright fatal to the patients, with roughly 15% of attempts being fatal. Finally, in 1967, he was banned from conducting the procedure anymore after killing a patient with a cerebral hemorrhage while conducting their third lobotomy. 5 years later, he died from complications due to cancer at the age of 76. He will not be missed. If you found this interesting, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Menagerie. Today's monster was the director of the infamous Site 731, a secretive part of the Imperial Japanese Army wherein the extremes of human tolerance to pain and injury were tested on living people. He was as brutal, if not worse, than the more notorious Dr. Joseph Mengele. Born in 1892 to a sake maker in Shibayama, Japan, early on in his education, he was recognized for his intelligence and nearly eidetic memory. Due to this academic aptitude, he was accepted to study medicine at Kyoto University, where his focus was on microbiology. In 1935, he was appointed as the head of Site 731, a site officially titled the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. Officially titled Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. This site killed an estimated 500,000 people for the sake of their experiments. The site had many roles, including the development and testing of various bioweapons, testing the disease's effects on unwilling test subjects. They also tested the extremes of human pain and suffering to practice medical intervention that could help soldiers injured on the field. This included tests ranging from freezing subjects to amputation and reattachment of said limbs on other parts of the body, vivisections of men, women, and children, organ removal, such as removing the stomach and attaching the esophagus to the small intestines. Though some of the work there specifically related to biowarfare, much of the practices committed on living people were perpetrated merely out of morbid medical curiosity. Regardless of the outcomes of the experiments, The patients, or logs as they were labeled, the vast majority were either executed or merely left to die due to complications from the mutilation of their body. In spite of so many atrocities, researchers apprehended by the United States were given immunity in exchange for providing their research for the US's own biowarfare programs. Because of this get-out-of-jail-free deal with the US, Shiro Ishii was allowed to live out the rest of his life as a free man until his death in 1959 of laryngeal cancer at the age of 67, never having to answer for his barbaric crimes and the lives that he took. That's all I have for you today. Feel free to comment down below, like, subscribe, the usual stuff. And I'll see you all next time when we visit another monster in the Menagerie. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Menagerie. Today's monster ignored the reality staring him in the face for the sake of his dogmatic political ideology. In doing so, he contributed to the deaths of tens of millions of Russians. Trofim Denisovich Lysenko was born in September of 1898. Educated at the Kiev Agricultural Institute, in 1940 he was appointed by Stalin as the director of the Institute of Genetics, in spite of the fact that he vehemently denied Mendelian inheritance, instead embracing a warped version of Lamarckism of his own creation he dubbed Lysenkoism. The foundation of this quackery was that all biology, and science in general, was class-oriented in nature. Lysenko's attack on the bourgeois pseudoscience of modern genetics, instead proposing that plants can rapidly adjust to a changed environment suited to the ideological battle in both agricultural and Soviet society. In other words, that in a collectivist society, plants would share resources equally, to each according to their needs, and from each according to their ability. Sound familiar? Meaning that you could plant resource-intensive crops together on Russia's collectivized farms, and regardless of the plant's needs and methods of growth, naturally, these factors could be ignored because according to Lysenkoism, the plants would collectively aggregate resources accordingly. On its face, with even a basic understanding of agriculture, let alone biology, this, quote, theory is patently absurd. However, it did fit with the narrative of the Soviet government and the narrative that they wanted to push at the time. So it was embraced wholeheartedly. Those who disputed Lysenkoism in the Soviet Union were generally either executed or sent to the gulags, with several being executed as enemies of the state. All the while, government media hailed Lysenko as a brilliant visionary, one bringing forth a new form of agriculture to the people that would solve the famine problems that the nation already faced. The result was obvious, immediate, and catastrophic. Crop failure after crop failure after crop failure. And because all agriculture was state-run, there was no one using any alternative form of agriculture. It was either Lysenkoism or nothing. The result of this caused millions to starve. One particularly despicable example of this was the Holodomor famine in Ukraine, where most of the photos you're seeing came from. Later on, China adopted the same pseudoscience with identical results. The actual toll of lives lost is incalculable, but considering how many died in Russia during the famines and in China during the Great Leap Forward, the numbers are enormous. In spite of this, Lysenko lived out his life quite comfortably and never had to answer for his role in the deaths of tens of millions of people. Like so many we cover here in the Menagerie, he was yet another example of a person who was able to commit an enormous atrocity and suffer zero consequences. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. If you like my content, feel free to follow, like, comment, whatever you feel like doing. And I'll see you all next time as we examine another monster within the menagerie. Thank you.